It feels to me like, when a movie comes out that was based on a book and people go like, "Oh my god, it's nothing like the
Yeah,
book. You have to read the
yeah.
book." I feel like people who love the book probably watched this movie and were like, "Yeah, it's just like the book."
Hello, welcome back to Across the Pond with me, James, and you.
Jeff.
There was a gap.
Yep.
We started reviewing films because there aren't enough reviews on YouTube and or online. So we've given our great weight and minds to reviewing older films that have come out a reasonable amount of time ago that we haven't seen before. And when, as is being filmed during the COVID-19 pandemic, when that's over, we will start reviewing films that are a little more up to date. But
Yep.
this week, and we don't know why, but we decided to pick Doctor Zhivago.
That's generous, James. You decided to pick Doctor Zhivago. Well, you elected it. I guess I participated after you elected to have it viewed. So, yes, we did pick that. I just want to correct the record. Maybe you're coming in on episode 3. You didn't watch 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And you think that what you're about to watch, our review and how we feel about it is, our fault or my fault. It started with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, correct. And spoiler alert, there are spoilers. And spoiler alert, we didn't enjoy it.
No.
Here's a clip.
In a couple of weeks, you'll be with your little girl.
If I can get on a train. I want to be with Katia more than anything in the world.
Yes, of course.
But now that we're going, I feel sad. Sad. Really sad.
Well, we've been here some time.
Yes. This must have been a lovely house once. Don't you think?
Doctor Zhivago, it's obviously a book, I think like a 550-page book, which has been turned into a film. I guess it's like one of those books which maybe doesn't work so well on screen, and they've kind of just tried to make it work. It's based in... it starts in imperialist Russia, and it works its way through the revolution from, I guess, the First World War through the revolution in 17, and then through to the early 20s with the Russian Civil War, Whites versus the Reds. And it hints upon all that stuff, which, having studied history, is all quite interesting through the film. I think it makes everything very simple in terms of the historic, what happened. But, it hints at some very interesting stuff happening around it, and unfortunately plows through what I would describe as a very boring love story into the middle of what is actually a fascinating piece of history. And I would suggest it's not a very interesting love story.
I think so. You've done a great job summing it up. I'm not a student of history, so there was a lot of moments where I wasn't quite sure what was happening, and I was maybe more interested in the love story aspect because I didn't study a lot of Russian history. My girlfriend, who checked in and out of the film, obviously deciding to do something else with her time.
Did she make a stew and then go on a 20-mile hike and then design a car that runs on water? And then she got to the intermission.
Yeah. And then she came back and there was still like 3 hours left in the movie. So she checked in and out. And I think it was maybe more interesting for her because she knew a little bit about the history, whereas I was ignorant of the history more or less and a bit more interested in the love story, which I think is really weird now to watch because I kept reading, and there's words like, oh, one of the greatest love stories of all time and blah, blah, blah. But if you watch this film, I think, and you pay attention to it and you give it your undivided focus, to me, I don't know about the quality of the love story. I'm not sure about that, but the thing that really kind of irks me is that, like, he's kind of like he's not a very good person. If his wife were maybe unaffectionate or whatever, or maybe kind of a snotty, bougie, full of herself, she was some of those things. Like she comes off the train in her pink little thing and all that stuff, but she really is doing the best she can and trying to make the home as familiar and comfortable for Dr. Zhivago as they go through, from bougie to communist to we're like, shoveling crap out of a train and all this stuff. She really does her best. So when he pursues Julie Christie's character, Lara, you don't really feel like, oh, I really hope they make it out of this. You kind of feel like, oh my God, you're a dick.
Literally.
That's how I felt.
Mate,
anyway.
I took notes because 3 hours long, and you can tell we're mates because my first note was, Zhivago is a dick. That was on my first note. I was like, why am I'm not rooting for this guy.
Well, actually, you know what? You're the history expert here, so I want to confirm something with you. Back in this time, and you would know this because you've studied, you went to King's, I know all this stuff about you. Can you just confirm or deny that there were only 20 people living in Russia?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, good. Because everyone seemed to, like, they got off the train, they see a familiar face. Oh, were you at that party? Yeah, I was at that party. Like, there's only 20 people that lived in Russia for about that 50-year span, and they all were friends, and they all knew each other, and it was just, anyway.
One thing I was thinking was, because I struggle to concentrate beyond an hour and 40, 145, but do we have a problem in our age of a film like this, which is it tells a story over such a long period of time, and it builds these characters, some cases good, some cases bad, over a very long period of time. Is that an issue with us? Should we be welcoming a film of 3 hours plus where there's no action, there's no Battle of Helm's Deep to get to at the end, or Star Destroyers being blown up or whatever. It's just essentially a love story with some minor twists as you run through it. And I wouldn't go for this sort of film normally, but is it something that we should, instead of grit our teeth and sit there and wish we were outside having a walk around, is it something that we should really be trying to enjoy?
That's a really interesting question, because similarly I think about, like, we're going to have kids someday, maybe with each other, maybe not. And I wonder, the stuff the kids are growing up on now, Pixar, even going back to like the Harry Potter movies, like, that are pretty elaborate, and a lot of the people that are that directed the Harry Potter movies are people that are directing like Marvel movies. Like, it's a spectacle, I wonder if I were to put my kid in front of, like, I don't know, Mary Poppins, if they just want to, like, fish their eyeballs out with a spoon, like, is it the most boring thing in the world compared to what we have now? Is it just that, like, we think this movie is just exhausting because it's not good, or because we've been, I don't know, like, conditioned to be bored if things aren't moving all the time?
We can't even get through a 20-second TikTok video. So let's just step back and analyze this love story, right? So we've got Yuri, who's Dr. Zhivago, Yuri Zhivago, played by Omar Sharif. We've got who is a reasonably well-developed character, but smiles all the time, even when he seems to be saying happy or bad things.
And the moistest eyes,
yes,
I think, out of anyone in this film.
We've got Tonya, who is his wife, who is a very 2D character. They really didn't develop her in any way, shape, or form. Almost to the point where she seems a bit deranged through the film. She seems to smile the whole time. And then there's Lara, who is very well developed, I think, in comparison to Tonya, which I couldn't really work out why. And maybe that's what the book's like, right? I don't know what the source material's like. And obviously the love triangle is with Zhivago, Tonya, and Lara. As I've said before, they seem to all, in some magic serendipitous world, end up in the same place, no matter how many thousands of miles they're travelling around Russia, meaning the love triangle can kind of concoct itself. But even then, we spend about an hour and a half in the film, And Zhivago meets Lara whilst he's away at the front in the First World War, but they don't even get together. So they just have a nice time for 6 months.
Yep.
So it's about 2 hours in that they make out when they're in this other town, and they seem to meet amazingly. So you have to sit through 2 hours to get to the point where the cheating starts, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it asks a lot of you to get to that point. I know they're building the world and what's happening in Russia and the characters, but really, I'm not sure they build them enough for 2 hours to get to the point where they start macking. And then the actual sort of love triangles probably only last about 15 minutes before he's then shipped off to war again.
Yeah. And there's kids involved because he's got his very young son who looks the same throughout the
decade,
the window of time. Yeah. And then you've got her daughter who is friendly with Dr. Zhivago, and also there's a scene where it seems like she was aware that Yuri had a whole other family. Mm-hmm. And then Yuri kind of looks down and feels sad and just goes back to his other family. Mm. And then at some point continues to make love to his actual wife,
then
who might be his sister.
Suddenly she's pregnant.
She's pregnant. So this guy, he's not he's obviously conflicted, but he's not a very principled person. I suppose you could make the case that he is principled enough to go back to the town and call it off, only to be intercepted and then, again, shipped off to war for 2 years on the front lines. But he doesn't really, she says to him back in the first, when they're kind of hanging out for a couple months, whatever, she says, don't do anything that you have to lie to your wife about. And he kind of agrees, he's like, yes, that's true. But he's not really trying to be a better person throughout the rest of the film, I don't think.
But I really liked step back in this love triangle. He's a doctor, Doctor Zhivago, amazing. I'll put the two and two together. He goes off to the Ukrainian front in the First World War, and that's where he meets Lara, even though they've kind of missed each other in Moscow, right? Again, there's only 20 people in Russia. They meet, and I think that bit of the film I liked. I liked that they kind of built this world where they were working together. And yeah, like in life, you might meet someone and have a connection. And at the end of that time, at the First World War's done or whatever happens, they embrace, and she's like, yeah, she said, don't do anything that you don't want to hurt your wife. You essentially say, we've got a connection, it's all good, but let's not rock the boat here. And I quite like that bit. That was quite nice, and that kind of did feel like life, where you meet new people and different things happen. And then you had to just slog through another 2 hours, 20 minutes of what of not great film.
It's not an amazing love story. It's a tricky love story. Like, there's one point where he goes into town for the last time to see Julie Christie, and he gets I guess he gets intercepted, and he has to go away for 2 years to whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Good, dude. Let this be a lesson to people watching this today, like the fuckboys watching it today. Like, if you step out on your girlfriend, you too might get disappeared by a European army and forced to do surgery. No, you deserve that. Good. I wasn't sad for him. It sucks, but at the same time, the thing about this film too is that we saw we started out with The Godfather, and then we watched
Wicker Man.
Watched The Wicker Man. For a romance or a romantic film, you'd expect there to be a little bit of romance. You know what I mean? You'd expect it to be some tension and release. Release. They kind of prime the pump, and then finally it's so just not a part, the physicality of the relationship. When he kisses her, he's punching her in the face with his head.
That was just one of the worst kisses I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple things about this film that didn't make me feel like they were important to the film. One was there's war. I never felt a real clear and present sense of danger in this film. There's one scene, and it was very brief, where he's sewing someone up. Again, I have no idea. Whatever, maybe at the 1 hour and 20-minute mark, he's sewing someone up, and someone's holding a lantern, and someone goes, "Oh, I can hear fighting in the back." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. Just keep going." Like, you never really feel. And that might have, like, I hate to say it, but that might have made the film a bit more interesting if there was always this sense that you could turn a corner and you would walk into, like, a bunch of whites or reds or Bolsheviks or whatever. So that was gone. The other thing that was in this film that we were constantly reminded of, but didn't ever really feel like it was true or like it mattered, is that this guy was a poet. And you called this out to me over Facebook. You're like, it's been 2 hours. I haven't seen him write a poem. But everyone in the film is like, oh, you're Dr. Zhivago. You must be the poet.
Fundamental issue with the whole film is that he doesn't start writing poetry till like 2 hours 45 minutes.
He doesn't talk about his poetry. Other people talk about his poetry. He never recites a poem or reads a poem or looks at, like, the sun and then starts to write because he's so inspired. He has, like. I was thinking maybe they'll reveal that Dr. Zhivago, like, that the poet was, like, someone else or something, and he was assuming, just because it was so divorced from what you were seeing on screen, just like the war never felt real.
After about an hour,
it was really strange.
After about an hour, I was like, is he outsourcing his poetry to someone, like, that we don't see? He's just gone to some other country to outsource his. That was a fundamental issue with the whole film. Was this guy is meant to be not just a doctor, he's meant to be a poet who is so good that even through the Bolshevik revolution, through everything going on, people knew about his poetry. And we don't see people reading his poetry, even, like, slipping it under the door or whatever, I don't know, like passing it to someone in the street. We don't really hear people talk about it unless they go, "Oh, you're Dr. Zhivago, the poet." And in 2 hours 45 minutes in, he just has, like, I don't know what happens to him. He's like, "Oh, I've knobbed a few girls, so now I'm going to start writing some poetry." I don't know why no one said, should we just have a shot of him writing some poetry?
Or, like, maybe reading some poetry. Like, maybe he had his feet up and you could see, I don't know, like, I don't know how they would do it, because obviously he'd be reading a book in Russian. Because this is what, that's the other thing about this film that, like, we all kind of take for granted, but whenever there's, like, any historical nonfiction or historical films or whatever, like, it's just everyone's British, which is just funny to see them walk past, like, Russian signs and
I was laughing at the start. I was like, wow, I sound really Russian.
Well, it was also like in Chernobyl, everyone has, like, British and Irish accents. Yeah. Welcome to Chernobyl. We're so glad you're here in Chernobyl. And I think that one of the things that kept me watching this film was Lara, because I thought she was a really interesting character. But we don't hang out with her that much. It's really cool when she comes on screen because she's, like, this very visually commanding presence, and she's got an interesting life and all that stuff. But, like, the rest of the film is following this guy around on a train, on a horse, in the snow, and, like, he's not doing that. Like, if he was, like, negotiating really interesting, like, things to, like, get this to bring it back to his wife, or he had to fend people off, and, like, he was just so boring to me. I don't know.
And they brush over in this film some, like, really, and again, it might be a time period that it's been filmed in, but they brush over some really horrendous things. Like, at one point, the partisan Bolsheviks just kill a load of children, and it's over, and they just walk up to them and they go, "Oh, we killed a load of kids, thanks." And the train drives past a burnt out village with people. A dead baby is thrown onto, and nothing hits home. They're just like, "Oh, baby's dead," and they just, like, throw it out again. There's no much sort of emotion in any of this stuff. And maybe if you look at, like, The Pianist, right, and which is an amazing film,
which I haven't seen still, but
I mean, when they talk about the ghetto in Warsaw, it's horrendous, and people become desensitized to death. So people just are on the floor, but you get that feeling that they've become desensitized. In this film, you don't get the feeling anyone's desensitized to anything. It's just a flat line through the whole film. And you know, I like when you show those kind of horrific things, but that's got to mean something. It didn't seem to mean anything to Zhivago, who has children, that he's just been part of a group of people that have killed loads of children.
So she has like a string of kind of weird men in her life, Lara. You know, she has Pasha, and Pasha's like, he's very passionate, and you know, he's very keen. He's very idealistic. He wants a revolution. You know, he's kind of weak in a sense and kind of pathetic. And then she's got Orson Welles, who's like Orson Welles. And then eventually she meets Yuri Zhivago, who is like only really interesting and attractive to her and worth pursuing. Just, I think, because he is not those guys. Like, there's this moment when he's sewing someone up and she kind of looks at him and he's like just doing his job. And that's really all the appeal that he has. And again, he never writes a poem, he never reads a poem. So I'm the whole time I was like wondering, this film is called Doctor Zhivago. Got it. Cool. We see him in med school, he's learning stuff. He seems like a nice guy, he seems like a polite guy, but he's so like nothing. Yeah. He's just like a guy who does his job, and he's kind of handsome. But
the problem is that they insinuate there's loads behind him.
Right.
But they never show it until 2 hours 45 minutes in. And that's a fundamental issue with this film, is that the guy who's meant to be good at poetry never writes poetry. So, having spent the whole day either watching or discussing Dr. Zhivago, we're now going to rate it. So, as per normal, our rating system is out of 10. And then we have to give it, would we recommend it to our friends, families, or randomos in the street? So I think I went first last time, so you have to go first this time.
Okay. So would I recommend this movie to a friend or something? No. I mean, I might ask them, do you like 3 hour long? We could keep making jokes about this, but like if they're the kind of person that likes to watch old movies, which is, what does that even mean now? It's kind of like saying classical music. There's all kinds of music. But like, if they like to watch old movie, if they like romance and all that stuff, then I'd be like, do a bit of reading on it first and then maybe check it out. I would not emphatically tell someone to go and see this film, even if they fit all the kind of criteria. They're like, oh, I'm a Julie Christie head. Oh, I'm an Omar Sharif head. What? They were in this movie together? I still might not suggest that they go watch this film. What is its rating? Well, as we said, the music was interesting, kind of over applied. The cinematography is wonderful. I don't know, dude. I give this film probably a 4.6.
Okay.
Out of 10.
Yeah, I mean.
So first of all, would you recommend it, and what's your rating?
No, I wouldn't recommend it unless it was someone who was into film or that kind of thing. I don't think it's worth the 3 and a bit hour slog. I thought there were some really interesting aspects. I thought the history behind it was really interesting. Russia's cool. I've been there a few times. It's a nice place. I thought some of the cinematography was really nice. There's some really nice shots of the trains ploughing through snow with the sun just coming up. But I can't get over the fact that there are fundamental issues, like the main character, Dr. Zhivago, who is meant to be a poet, doesn't talk or look at or write anything about poetry until 2 hours 45 minutes in the film. And for that, I'm going to give it 4 out of 10. Wow. And I think tomorrow I'd probably give it like a 5, but it's just hit me. Right. It's hit me that I've got to go to work tomorrow. I've got a busy week. You know, the sun is setting in Britannia, and it's been a slog.
And again, you would not. I mean, I'm giving you the option here. I am at this moment a magical being that gives you the power to kind of go back in time and re-rate The Godfather and The Wicker Man. And are you going to hold steady on those scores after you've been exposed to 3 hours and 15 minutes of Omar Sharif with moist eyes? Okay.
And I was happy with my scores. I've set a good benchmark, and that brings us on to will the benchmark hold up with our next film, which will be...
People have been dying to get to this part. I'm going to break it. Let me break this to the fans here. Citizen Kane.
Right.
Will be the next one that we watch.
So what we thought is we've watched an old film that's very long. So we'll watch another old film that's probably very long. That was it on Doctor Zhivago. We can put that in back in the box, back in Pandora's box, and never open that again. See you next time.
Did you take notes?
I just wrote a few when I was just...
I was thinking I should do that for the next one because I never do.
Just because it was 3 hours long and I did fall asleep halfway through. That's not even a joke. I drifted off for about 2 minutes and I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm still in the kind of same area that I was.